Okay, guys, we are ready to go. So first things first, if you're in your management console, we are going to go to our VPC landing page or dashboard, if you like to call it that. So here we are. We are at our resources region. We're going to click VPCs. Now, VPCs, this is your kingdom. This is where you're going to be setting up your own personal real estate. You're going to have your own subnets. This is where you create everything that you need to know. This is your fort. And so by doing so, what we want to do first is click Create VPC. And now we want to type in your own personal name that is easy to reference, easy to look for. And since I have multiple VPCs up and running, so I got to be a little, got to add mine to a 02. So we're going to put in our default IP address, which is 10.0.0.0/16. And we're not going to need any IPv blocks. We're just going to do a default tenancy. This is going to be a very simple VPC, of which we're going to have two subnets. We're going to add a router. We're going to add an internet gateway, and we're going to have a public and private router so that you can understand why you would need a public subnet and why you would need a private subnet. So right now we are creating our VPC. We're going back to the dashboard. So as you can see right here, this is my VPC. This is my CIDR block address, which is 10.0.0/16. Our DNS resolution is enabled, and we're ready to go. So the first thing that I want to do is be able to provide a connection to the internet gateway for my VPC. So we're going to go over to the drop-down area, and we're going to look for our internet gateway. And it's, I want to open that up. I want to open up extra windows so everyone can be able to easily reference what we're doing at a moment's notice. And if anyone needs me to slow down, I'll definitely be looking at the chats. And if Chris, you could help me with that, if anybody needs any assistance, I'll be more than happy to do so. So now we're over at the, we're going to select our internet gateway, actions, or rather create internet gateway. That will be my-IGW02. And we already have our tags. We're going to create our internet gateway. Now, remember, when I was first starting on VPCs, one of the biggest issues that I couldn't understand was that why am I not connecting? But I also have to remember that you have to not only create your VPC, you have to attach it as well. It's all like plumbing. You gotta build it, and you have to attach it so that everything can work and connect with each other. So let's attach to the VPC. We have our My VPC 02 that I originally created. We're going to attach that internet gateway. And now we're going to be back over here. So the next thing I want to do is create our subnets. So I want to create a private and a public subnet. Now, when you're doing a public subnet, you usually want to have a public subnet for in the instance that you want to SSH using an EC2 so that you can privately create that compute and that instance back into that public subnet. So you can specifically if you want to specifically get to the EC2 from your public IP, that's what you can do in that instance for a public subnet. But for a private subnet, say for instance, you are using that same EC2 instance in that public subnet to connect to your database of which you want no connection to an internet gateway or to the internet as a whole, you use that for that particular instance. So let's create a subnet. So we're going to do public subnet. Rather, let me go back here. We're going to create our subnet. We're going to connect it to our VPC, and we're going to say my hub sub. And our preference, because I am in the Texas area, and the best area for me is going to be US East 2A. That's going to be for my public subnet. Now we're going to have our CIDR range as 10.0.0.0/24. Or rather, let me rephrase that. 10.0.1.0/24. Now with this group, this gives us 251 usable IP addresses for this /24. But in the instance of AWS, remember what Mike said, they take 4 off the top and they take 1 from the bottom. So that leaves us with only 249 IP addresses to use in this subnet. We've added our tag here. We're going to create that subnet. Okay. Now, what I like to do is make sure that everything is attached. So our actions, we're going to go to this specific area. Actually, we'll do everything. We're going to, because since it's a public pub sub, we're going to add our NACLs. Okay. Now, because this is public, we don't have to worry about protecting anything. We don't have to worry about locking anything down because we want access to the internet. So what we want to do is look at our inbound rules. And we want to adjust them. Okay, wait a minute. Let me go back, because sometimes this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do is I'm going to go and create our subnets, all of them all at once, so that I don't confuse everyone all together. So bear with me as I get this all squared away. Then we have our subnet. Okay. And we're going to create another private subnet, or rather a private subnet to go with our public subnet. And in this instance, because we want to consider about durability, and we want to make sure that this particular subnet is going to be in US2B. We have our name and our private sub tag attached. We're going to create that subnet. Rather, we got to add the CIDR block. So right here in our public subnet, we had 10.0.1.0/24. Now we're going to have a 10.0.2.0/24. And our subnet is created. So now what we want to do is we want to be able to add our route tables. Now, remember before when I was saying about the internet gateway, we need to be able to connect to the internet, and it's all about plumbing. So we want to create that route table so that everything can interconnect with one another so that it can do what it's supposed to do and communicate with each subnet, and the public subnet can also access the internet gateway. So we're going to create a route table, and we're going to call this our public route. We're going to attach it to our VPC 02. Now, it's always important to make sure, especially if you have so much traffic like I do on my dashboards, to connect the right VPCs to your right subnets, NACLs, security groups. It's all about detail, and it's all about making sure that you have everything associated with the right groups. So we're going to tag it as name, public route table. create, close. So now with that public route table, we look at our routes, we're going to add some. Now, of course, that public route is connected to the subnet, to the VPC that of which it's in, but we want to add additional subnets. We want to connect it to itself, 0.0, so that it can all be connected together. Okay. Then that can also be connected to the internet gateway. Save route. Oops. Route table. Oh, that's right. Okay. So we're not doing that. Dot 0 dot 2 dot 0 slash 24. Sometimes you got to relearn this stuff as you go along because it's so important to get this right. Okay. I believe that is what we need to do. Okay. Oh man, what am I doing wrong here? Okay. Oh, that's right. We don't even need one here. That's what I'm thinking about my private subnet. So because we're already, as the public route, we're already connected to our VPC. And the VPC is already connected to the internet. So we're good to go there. So let's create a private route.
Alonzo,
Yes.
can you zoom on the view on Google Chrome?
Okay.
Like you get to the, yeah, there we go.
Is that good for everyone? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now we're on the private route. Now remember here, we do not want this connecting to the internet. So there's no reason to connect it to anything else at all. So we're just going to say private route. And that's adjusted. So let's see, that is, it's always good to remember to name these things appropriately. But now that I remember, I also, the subnet associations, the route here particularly, I forgot that not only does it have to connect to the VPC of 10.0.0.0/16, we want to make sure that it is connected to the internet gateway itself. So I believe that is the right thing going on. There we go. So yeah, it can be a little confusing sometimes, making sure you're dealing with the route specifically, but ensuring that everything is connected with each other is key so that the entire VPC can move and information can flow to the right areas as necessary. So now we're looking at our VPC, making sure that we're good to go there. Subnets. Just making sure our route tables are good to go. Making sure. Internet gateway. Okay, so now that we have our public and our private subnet, what I want to do is add the NACLs. Now, the NACLs is basically the firewall of the subnet, as the security group is the firewall of the instance that is within the subnet itself. So let's take a look at that. So I want to create a network ACL. That will be my pub NACL. I want to associate it with my VPC. The tag is there. I'm creating that NACL. So now the inbound rules, as it is a public, what we want to do is create a new rule to allow traffic to come in.
Walk them through, Alonzo, which subnets you're creating and which ones you want them to go through, like which rule you're creating for your public versus your private. Make it a little clearer if you can.
Okay. Now, in this particular area, we are focusing on our public NACLs. This is going to be our accessibility into the internet. And we'll discuss the private NACL after we create this one. So we want to allow, so we want inbound traffic to come in. Save changes. So now we want to create our private NACL. We're going to select that VPC as well. We have our naming tag and our value. Create NACL. So the difference with this one is that we do not want any traffic into the internet. So we want to create some new inbound rules. Right here, it says allow. We do not want that. Otherwise, everyone can get into our private information and do what they want. So say, for instance, we did a SSH into our EC2. In this illustrative purposes, I can provide SSH, and then I can add my source for my own personal IP so that the only way that this EC2 in the private subnet can be accessed is through my own IP information. Allow. Save changes. So right now, just looking back at our VPC, I just want to recap what I did. I created my own VPC. This is your own personal environment, your own realm, your own fort, if you will, of your own environment of what you want to create therewith. I created both a public and private subnet. The public subnet is going to be an opportunity for you to drop in, say, for instance, a EC2, where only thing that you want it for is to SSH into any private subnets for your EC2s. And your private subnet, say, for instance, that's where you house personal information that you do not want accessible to the internet, which will be your databases or any other information that is critical. Like, say, for instance, some of this database information could be credit card information, HIPAA-related medical documents that is critical for companies to keep private. The route tables also associated, well, like I said, I had the public route, which is associated with the public subnet and creates a route out of the VPC into the internet. The private route is focused on keeping the information in the VPC itself, so that it does not have accessibility into the internet, nor can anyone tunnel into that. And the internet gateway is the door to the internet that allows access into and out of your VPC. Your NACLs, again, are going to be your firewall for your specific subnet. You can set those parameters to allow traffic in, like the public NACL, where it's accessible out of the VPC and into the internet, or you can create that private NACL where everything is locked down. Nothing can get in and nothing can get out. And of course, the security groups, if we had any EC2s or we created EC2s like we did yesterday, that would be placed into your subnet of choice. And it will be surrounded by that security group. That security group, say for instance, it is an SSH specified to only be accessible from your IP address, can be used there. And so back to the VPC, these are a lot of the key elements, a lot of the key resources and services that you can use to create your VPC.
Alonzo, thank you. As you look, note that what Alonzo was doing here is we were demonstrating how to create a VPC. As Alonzo mentioned, he kept the VPC open because we wanted public reachability, because this is a lab environment. Have this been a real environment, we'd be using firewalls to provide perimeter security. We'd have pretty strict rules that we would be doing. So realistically speaking, that's what we're talking about. So your VPC subnets are going to be in a data center. They're obviously going to be regional because, how else would you get a subnet across data centers unless you were bridging VLANs and running layer 2 traffic, which obviously is not something that AWS is going to let you do, like run a VLAN and an 802.1q tag and trunk from switch to switch. Say your private subnets and your VPCs, they're going to be locally significant. So Alonzo, really great job on that, and thank you.
Thank you.
Really, thank you.